Let's start with a very interesting Reddit story from Condiments for you. Condiments The Great. Hi all, Happy New Year's. In reviewing some of my best memories of the last few years, I remembered an incident of malicious compliance that I found overwhelmingly satisfying and thought it'd be worth sharing. While not as outrageous as some of the stories here, it left me feeling like I stuck it to our corporate overlords a bit. To set the stage, I moved back to the US to take a job at a pretty big firm where I was also tasked with executive assistant responsibilities. My boss would regularly send me downstairs to our local bank to pick up and deposit cash. Having newly moved back to the US, I needed to set up a bank account for direct deposits and figured the one downstairs makes sense. Also, it made depositing paychecks quicker and easier. On the day I went to open the account, the manager of the branch sat me down to go through all the paperwork. She was nice enough at first, and I got through everything quite quickly. That said, when it came to the sinuate portion, I thought I'd have a bit of fun with it and create a silly signature. Having just watched a Roman documentary the night before, I made my signature The Great. Obviously, I used my first name in place of condiments. The manager did non-bat an eye at this, assuming she didn't read it, and said she'd process everything and give me a call when my card is ready to collect. Cut to a little later, I receive a call from the manager saying there's something wrong with the paperwork and I needed to come down to correct it. When I ask what the problem is, she says that I'm not allowed to have a signature like that and I need to redo it using my actual name. I say, okay, and that I'll be right down. This kind of pissed me off though, because I've seen wild signatures that hardly resemble letters, yet they were still accepted. I did some quick research and found that, legally, a signature can be any mark that I plan on using consistently. It didn't have to be a name, nor even resemble letters. Being bored that day, I decided to press it and print out the laws regarding signatures, and bring them with me to the bank. When I met the manager, I told her that I'd actually like to keep the signature as is and provided her with the documents I printed outlining the laws. She did not seem enthused at all and said she'd need a moment to discuss with her superiors. A few minutes later, she comes back and says, while I'm correct about the law, they require the signature to match the one on my driver's license, since that's the one currently associated with me. I pushed back and mentioned that I wanted to have a new signature, but she was firm on it matching my ID or they wouldn't open my account. Cue malicious compliance. I realized then that since the state I moved to was different from the one I lived in before, I had to legally update my license. So I told the manager I'd think it over and get back to her soon. I hurried upstairs and made a DMV appointment for later that week to get a new license. The day of the DMV appointment, I brought everything I needed to ensure I walked out with a new license. When it was time for me to provide a signature for the license, I again wrote The Great, and was again met with pushback. The teller literally said, "Sir, this is the DMV and we don't play games like that." Welp, I whipped out the law to show them that I am actually allowed to use this as my signature, and the teller's ego deflated real fast. Long story short, I walked out that day with a shiny new license and my new signature. I drove directly from the DMV back to the bank and met with the teller. I told her that I will agree to sign the documents using the same signature on my license. I don't think she could have looked any smugger. She took me back to the office and sat me down to resign the documents, and I did so as the Great. When she says this, she practically started shouting about how I'm wasting their time and either need to get serious or they'll have me escorted out. This is when I slowly removed my brand new ID and slid it across the desk. Her face went blank, and I honestly couldn't tell what she was thinking. She asked me to leave the office for a moment so she could make a call. 10 minutes later, she comes out and says, while my signature does match the one on my license, they are just refusing to do business with me and ask me to leave. Not knowing the legality of that, I said, okay, and accepted defeat. I walked back up to my office and told the boss that they're not allowing me to open an account. I told him the full story, and he actually found it hilarious. He then said that he'd handle it. Later that day, I received a call from the bank saying that they changed their mind and that they've opened the checking and savings accounts I requested. D. I went to speak with my boss after who said that he had a productive chat with the manager. Knowing how much business he provides the bank, he was happy enough to bluff on my behalf. He essentially told the manager that not allowing me to open an account was directly affecting his business and that if they don't oblige, he'd close his accounts and take his business elsewhere. Apparently that threat hit hard, and the manager quickly backtracked, saying that they never refused my business, just had to get approval from upper management. At the end of the day, I was victorious and still use this signature on all official documents. It's a bit silly, but it's my trophy and a good conversation starter. TLDR. A bank refused to open an account for me after signing the document with Condiments The Great. They said it had to match his signature on my ID, so I updated my license with the same signature. This malicious compliance was brilliantly executed, and it was really perfect. Updating the license to outsmart the bank was a masterstroke, and at the same time hilarious, and OP's boss's intervention sealed the victory. The next story from Alex Wack. I'll make the quesadillas exactly as ordered, but you pay the dry cleaners. Obligatory disclaimer. On mobile, non-English speaker. Due to a previous post, I thought I write everything in my language and pass through Google Translation and the post it, but I may lose my reservation in hell. Still on hubby's account, an autocorrect error and my son's hungry stomach reminded me of my first conscious MC. It also kept away from Mexican food until I remit my husband. Back in the beginning of the 21st century, I was working in a cafe/sandwich shop. It was a 24/7 shop in a prime location, in an area with a lot of uni students and very active nightlife, and the road was a major artery for anyone travelling in or out of the city. When I started, as a first-year uni student trying to make some money, the shop was one of 4 of a small chain. Gary, the owner-manager, has bought the rights from the original shop. Gary was also doing quality control for the shop, because at that point, every shop had separate vendors. Fast forward 2 years, the original owners decide to incorporate, because they have a lot of offers for franchising and a couple of problems with quality control have appeared. So they bought back all the shops and instituted a more centralized approach to vendors. That was good for Gary because he was the owner of the building, so he basically became a salaried manager and got extra income from the rent. Initially, nothing changed. We were still number 2 in sales. Product was good. Then Dick entered the picture. Dick was the new regional manager. The small chain had become big enough to reach national level, and the person responsible for quality control. He was considered something of a golden boy, having a business degree and helping with the expansion. The problem came from his ego. You see, Dick had done a cooking workshop. That provides a certificate, but nothing more, and considered himself something of a chef. His first major change was installing a crepe station. Not restaurant-quality crepes, but crepes on the go, folded like a triangle. That is important for later. While a bitch to learn at the beginning, it quickly became one of our best sellers. We usually went over 10 litres of crepe mixture on a slow day. Having success with his first change, Dick decided to apply his chef training and implement some new things. At that point in time, Mexican cuisine was becoming popular in my country, due mostly to cooking shows. Dick decides to ride the trend and starts putting Mexican options on the menu. In reality, that meant 2 more set sandwiches and crepes, the ones on the board, and a few more customization options for sandwiches and crepes. And here begins the problem. As I said, Mexican cuisine was quite the new thing. Our country's cuisine is way different than the Mexican, especially on the spice level. A lot of the produce used for Mexican food was either rare or non-existent. But Dick was adamant it was another win for him found a vendor. And the quality started to fail. We started to receive buckets of pre-made chili and queso, and jars of picked jalapenos, and pre-made guacamole, and pico de gallo dips. Also, blocks of white cheese labeled queso blanco. The queso was an orange paste with some red bits in it. According to hubby, under a bad light it could pass for bad queso. And the left, a very plastic taste. It reminded of clay. One taste of that kept me away from Mexican food for a while. The jalapenos weren't jalapenos. They were pickled Thai green chilies, labeled as jalapenos, meaning they were way hotter than expected. I've never tasted the rest, but some adventurous customers that tried them weren't impressed. The only new thing that kind of sold was a plate of nachos, basically because it was Doritos covered in queso. When it was heated, it became an orange liquid, a lot of bacon and a lot of sausage. We have complained about the quality to Gary, but he couldn't do anything anymore, and Dick doesn't back down. Dick is a bit upset from the low sales. He blames us, you're not pushing them enough, and the customers. Those barbarians couldn't recognize a filet mignon from a shank. But he sticks to his guns, and then brings corporate to the shop. Dick comes in with 4 people from HQ. 2 of them are the owners. They sit and Dick comes and place an order of 5 quesadillas. It's a self-service shop. I ask how he wants them. Exactly as it says on the board and prepared exactly as I told you, he replies. Okay, sir. I will call you when they're ready, I replied, smiling. Now Dick, in all his chefy wisdom, has given us very specific instructions for the quesadillas. First, to take out of the way, it wasn't a proper quesadilla, it was a crepe. The instructions were, reheat the chili, start the crepe. Place 1.5 ladles of reheated queso. Add 1 ladle of the chili, add a tablespoon of chopped jalapenos, 1 tablespoon of queso blanco, half a tablespoon of guacamole, and fold. Doing that produced a liquid mess, which tried really hard to escape from a thin crepe. We usually reheated the queso only for nachos. Especially in a crepe, we put it cold and let it reheat with the plate's heat to avoid the aforementioned mess. Cue malicious compliance. We, me and the other girl working, make 5 quesadillas exactly as instructed. I took the order to the table, it was corporate after all, and waited for the results. 5 people, wearing white shirts and suits, bite into the quesadillas. The quesadillas almost simultaneously explode, raining melted cheese and red chili on them. Some of them have bitten a jalapeno, and the heat is hitting them hard. A few choice words were heard. We brought them 2 bottles of water for the heat and 2 full packs of napkins to clean what they could. Let's say the new menu wasn't a blast with HQ. After they left, Dick came back. He was beyond angry. He approached the bench, bypassing the line, it was during one of our rush hours, and made a scene. The following dialogue is a bit censored. "You stupid bitch. You made me look bad because you don't like Mexican food. You can't even follow basic instructions. The cleaning of your mess will be deducted from your pay." And some other more offensive stuff. I was standing there dumbfounded, along with a long line of customers hearing his outburst. And then Gary intervened. "Shut the f***. What the f*** did you say?" Dick replied. I said, "Shut the f***." The girls followed your instructions to the letter. Don't try to blame them for your mistake, or make them pay for your dry cleaning. Dick, I can do what the f*** I want. And when I'm finished with them, maybe I'll find another manager for this shop. Gary, I would love to see you try. Dick, oh, I will. I will. And he stormed out. Fallout. Immediately, Gary called HQ and notified about what happened. He also gave an ultimatum. If something happened to his staff, the company would need to find a new location. 3 days later, we were notified that Dick was fired. While his outburst was the main reason, one of the owners having a really bad reaction to the jalapenos. A week later, the Mexican menu was removed. During that part, they found out that Dick had used the cheapest vendor for the new menu. The vendor had a reputation for shady practices, which partly explained the weird products. I stayed there until I finished uni and got a job in my field. The Mexican menu made a huge comeback 2 years before I left. This time, HQ had hired a proper chef to consult and find vendors. Now the ingredients are as authentic as possible, and pico and guac are made daily in-house. They also have good queso now, although it took me a long time to try it. And no pre-packaged, pre-made chili. In fact, no chili at all. My repulsion to Mexican food ended when my husband took me to a proper Mexican restaurant and finally tested a proper Mexican meal. Edit? Well, this escalated quickly. Thank you all for the awards and you, a anonymous Redditor, for the gold. I've been in the comments and need to address two things. 1. I didn't put it through Google Translate. 2. When I say chili, I mean chili con carne. Although, with some of the knowledge I have now, I would characterize this as a bad sloppy Joe meat mix with delusions of grandeur. The malicious compliance was perfectly executed. Following Dick's exact instructions exposed his terrible recipe, embarrassing him in front of HQ. The exploding quesadillas highlighted his incompetence, leading to his firing and the removal of the disastrous Mexican menu.